All right, hello. Hello. Okay, guys. Hi. Good afternoon, as it is now. Good afternoon. Good morning if you're somewhere else. Good evening if you're in another place. Depending on where you are. You're all very welcome to this 1 o'clock webinar. As I'm here, um, we are going to be doing a focus 4 to 5 today on so the topic of today is describing a place. So before I begin, I'd like to just welcome you all, for people who are coming in now or for people who are watching later. Hello. So for anyone who wants to join in now, guys, just please introduce yourself. Let me know your name and where you're from, in Italy, in France, or in Spain, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, let me know. So tell me what school you attend. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Cahill, and I'm Irish. I'm from Ireland, and I'm a teacher at Milano Meravigli. So let me get that one. So that's the Mies in Milan, Meravigli, and yeah. So it's my name might be kind of new to you. It might not be new to you. You might have spoken to me before or not. Um, the reason why it's such a strange looking name is because this is in fact an Irish name. So it's not an English name. It's a name which is similar to Carlo in Italian and Carlos in Spanish. I guess Charles in English or Charles in French, depending on your pronunciation. But yeah, so Cahill, Carl, whatever you want to say is fine. Don't worry, some of my English-speaking colleagues can't get it right, so don't worry. So yeah, today, guys, we're going to do a focus on describing a place. So the reason why I chose to do this focus is just because, I mean, at the moment we are all confined to our homes. We all have to stay at home, and so um, it's kind of difficult to visit some of our favorite places. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to just talk about and describe a place that hopefully we will be able to visit in the near future when everything starts back up again and when the quarantine finally ends, which fingers crossed will be very soon. So, I mean, there's no one here at the moment, but I guess I'll wait another moment or two just to wait for people to give them a chance to come in. And yeah, if you guys want to, in the meantime, start thinking about different places around the world that you know of and that you think would be kind of a nice location to talk about in this focus activity. So here in the description, we can see today we're talking about there is, there are. We're using modal verb can. Also, of course, describing a place and, very important, prepositions. So let's begin. I'll start by going to the first slide here. Okay, so our first one here, guys, we're talking about where do you live? Okay, so I want to know the place. All right, so we have a couple of different choices here. We have in a city or in the suburbs or in a town, in a village, in the countryside, in the mountains, by the sea, near. So with near, you would use some sort of name of a city or name of a well-known town. So yeah, very important, guys, to remember the articles here, the differences between them. So we say in a city, whereas if you want to say I live in the city center of Milan, okay? I live in a city. What city? I live in Milan. Where do you live in Milan? I live in the city center. So in a city, when you're not being specific of the name, but when you want to talk about the location in the city, for example, the city center, then you would say in the. In the suburbs, again, because it's a specific location in somewhere, in a town, in a village, again, for the same reason we don't say in, so a town, a village, we're not giving the name, we're just saying a town, which could be any town. In the countryside, so the countryside is like the general area outside of a city, usually very rural, um, and kind of a very, very nice and tranquil, peaceful place. In the mountains, again, very peaceful. Um, by the sea, wonderful. By is just another uh, preposition that we use instead of near. So you can say by the sea or near the sea. Okay. And then, of course, near Berlin, but we would not say by Berlin. Okay. So by the sea or near the sea is also correct, but we only use near um, with a city. Okay. So where do you live? Well, I can tell you that at the moment I live in a city. I live in Milan, of course. But in Ireland, I lived. So I lived in Dublin, which again is a city, but I also lived in a small village north of Dublin. So not quite the countryside because there's still a lot of houses and shops and restaurants and pubs, of course, very most important. You have to have a pub in an Irish village. But yeah, it was a very small but very nice village on the coast as well. So it was by the sea. Okay, so that's where I live. So for example, if we're talking about the suburbs, guys, is kind of like the residential area of a city, and it's usually um, not the city center. It's usually outside or on the edge of the city. So that's what we'd say the suburbs. So yeah, it's usually it's just a phrase that we use. Um, you guys maybe we call them well, not the peripheries, but like the periphery of a city is the like the edge of the city, um, where the city lines meet the next, or they meet the countryside. That's kind of how I would describe it, I guess. So then that's what we have there. Now, yes. So we need to match the opposites. Okay, need to match the opposites. So we have some adjectives here, and we need to put them with the opposite of the that adjective. Okay. Hello? Am I back? Hello? Okay, I think I'm back. Oh my God, I don't know what happened there. I think just muted and cut out for some reason. Right. So where were we, guys? We were talking about the opposites. Okay. So number one there. Well, actually, I'll read down through them uh, for pronunciation. Okay. So we have number one, noisy. Number two, big. Number three, nice. Number four, old. Number five, clean. Number six, interesting. Number seven, beautiful. Then we have A, modern. B, quiet. C, boring. D, ugly. E, dirty. F, horrible. And G, small. So we have the first one there, noisy. What would be the opposite of noisy? So noisy might be a new one. Noisy, a kind of a synonym for noisy would be loud. Okay, so maybe that will give you guys a hint as to what to say for the answer. So noisy, the opposite of noisy would be quiet. Exactly. So then the next one, oh, let me change this here because this could be difficult to change. Okay, so we have noisy, which matches to, so one is B. Okay, then we have number two, which is big, and big, of course, the opposite of big, small. Okay, very good. Then nice. So nice is quite a positive, um, it's quite a positive thing to say. So nice. What could we say instead? Horrible. We would say horrible instead. Okay, for the opposite. Then we'd say old. So old. The opposite of old would of course be modern. All right, now old. The opposite of old is really new, but when we're talking about um, it's it's a difficult one because like yeah, when we're talking about a city, modern, but when we're talking about like items and objects, then yeah, we'd probably say modern or sorry, new. Clean then. Clean, dirty, of course, yeah. Interesting would then be boring. Okay. And of course, beautiful, the opposite of beautiful would be ugly. Okay. So those are the kind of adjectives that we use, guys, to describe um, a place. Okay. So let me just show you these. So we also have these extra adjectives here. So we have cultural, exciting, chaotic, historical, crowded, polluted. So what do you guys think? Which of the adjectives on the left are similar to these words? Okay. So we have cultural. What would cultural be? So culture is an interesting one. We could probably use because culture refers to what? It refers to a lot of different things: history, music, art, and all that sort of stuff. And so I guess cultural in this case would be similar enough maybe to old, perhaps. in the sense that you're talking about the culture of the city, the historical aspects perhaps of the city. We say something is exciting, exciting, similar enough to interesting. Interesting is more kind of like uh, cerebral, like kind of something that you find interest in. Your mind. Exciting is kind of like the feeling that you get when you're excited by something. Polluted, right? So polluted would of course be dirty. Anyone who has visited Milan knows that very well. I know it all too well. Chaotic, another one. God, another one I would describe Milan as. Certainly not boring. The chaotic would be the complete opposite of boring. Um, Noisy, perhaps. Chaotic. So chaotic coming from chaos. So lots of different things happening. Historical, again, historical and cultural, very, very similar, but cultural covers a lot more aspects, whereas historical is just talking about history. So, like I said before, we could probably say old in this case. And of course, crowded. So, crowded when there are a lot of people. We'd say a crowded place. Maybe there isn't one here on the right hand side. Noisy, perhaps, but noisy is more to do with sound and less to do with the amount of people. So crowded is just when there's a lot of people there. All right. So these guys are just some extra adjectives that we can use to talk about our city. All right. So let's move on to the next part here. Okay. So we need to describe these places now. So we have four different places in the world. I don't know if you guys have been there or if you guys have ever visited them, but we have London, we have Delhi, Lake Como, New York, and so the way that we ask for a description of something. So if we want a description of something, a place, a person, we can say, "What is something like?" Okay. When you want a description of something, you say what is or what are like. So it's kind of it's can be confusing because sometimes people ask the question, "What do you like?" So what do you like is like, or is asking for like in the sense of things that you like to do, the hobbies, your activities. Whereas what are you like is asking for a description of your personality. Okay, so this is a very very important difference to tell between guys because it's a common mistake. All right. So what is London like? And here in the example, they're saying London is very big and London isn't boring. I have to say they are absolutely right there. I visited London uh, nearly 3 years ago now. I think it was 2017 I visited London. And yeah, it was huge, very, very big to try to travel around. Thankfully, they have the underground, the metro or the subway, depending on where you are in the road, but they call it the underground, the tube in London. And it was very easy to get around, although very, very busy on the tube in London. I visited a couple of different places like King's Cross, which was very old but very cool, nice and historical kind of aspects of the buildings. And yeah, I had never visited London before that trip, which was strange because I lived in Ireland, close to Dublin, which is very close to England. So just never went to London. Oh, actually, no, that's a lie. I went to an Arsenal game, a football game, when I was very, very young with my dad and my uncle. So I had been to London before, but I hadn't really visited London properly. We went for the football match and then we went home. It was not like a tourist stay, whereas the trip 3 years ago was definitely a touristic stay. Then we have Delhi. Now, I've never been to Delhi. Maybe some of you guys have been to Delhi before, but I'm guessing from this picture anyway, it's an indicator of what Delhi is like. Very crowded, I imagine. Very noisy. Very big. I'm not sure how big Delhi is, but I'm assuming it would be very, very big, given the amount of people. Um, Quite chaotic, perhaps, and dirty as well, I would assume, just given the amount of people that are walking around all the time. But I imagine some of the smells would be interesting to smell. Obviously, Delhi being uh, in India, it would have the interesting smells of spices and such. It would be very nice to walk through the streets. Or maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Hopefully, I'm not. Then we have Lake Como, right? For any of the Italians watching, Como obviously very famous, well known, very very beautiful. I've been to Garda, but I haven't been to Como yet. I've visited Lecco, which is like a city close enough to Lake Como, and I've seen it from far away, but I've never been at the lake. But I guess with Lake Como, how could we describe this? Nice, quiet, beautiful, um, small, maybe not so much because it is quite still a big lake, and the community around it is quite big. Um, Funnily enough, Como is actually like the city of Como is not near the lake at all, which is very funny. Um, Definitely, it could be boring. I mean, I don't know how it could be boring with all of the views and all of the great location and sights to see around. Also, George Clooney's house there, so definitely not boring. So we have then maybe we could say old, perhaps, because yes, the houses that are built there are maybe not very old, but they're definitely not modern. I've seen some of the houses there; they're very nice, but they've certainly got quite a historical look to them. And then, God, if we save the best for last, perhaps we have New York, a fantastic city. Um, I only ever visited it once, but it was the best holiday experience I've ever had. It was big, it was noisy, it was dirty, but it was so interesting, so beautiful, and very very exciting to walk around the city and to experience um, all of the different famous places, the landmarks, Times Square, Battery Park, Central Park, the Natural History Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, all those kind of things. Oh, the Statue of Liberty, of course, as well, to name a few. Really cool to visit all of these really interesting places. So maybe at home, so if you guys are watching this after, you can describe your home. You can describe what your um, village, your town, your city is like, and write down a short description. The key here, guys, is that when we ask what is so and so like, we say it is, and then you insert the adjective. Okay, so it is with the adjectives. Okay. Usually, when we're describing a place, we don't need to go into too much detail about it. You don't need to say a lot. You don't need to describe it for a very long time. It's more uh, maybe if you're writing a review, if you're writing some sort of travel review, um, after you visited. So, say for example, you visit New York, and the travel agency, perhaps you booked through a travel agency. Travel agency gives you a review, and they ask you to write a description of your time in New York. Then you would use a lot of adjectives. You would use lots of descriptive language. But usually, we probably just use two or three adjectives to describe a place, um, and then be more specific about particular areas in the city. So, like for example, New York, it's big, it's exciting, and it's noisy, right? Maybe, or instead, it's big, it's exciting, it's modern. That could be a description of the city, right? Then, if you want to go into more detail, you would highlight the specific locations in the city. For example, Times Square, right? Times Square is interesting, noisy. It is, um, I don't know. How would you describe busy, crowded, right? Chaotic, you could say, right? Cultural, lots of different things happening. So yeah, all of those different things. So if you want to describe more kind of specific locations in a city, then you can do that. But in terms of the city in general, usually we only, I don't know, two or three, like we have in the example. London is big, and London isn't boring. So that's just giving you an example of the affirmative and the negative form. Okay. So again, you can describe your own home as well. All right. So now what we're going to look at is this, guys. So we're going to have a look at what do you do in these places, right? So what do you do in a cinema? You watch films and you eat popcorn. So in this case, the you, we're using the impersonal you, right? So we're not directing it at you. We're saying people in general, right? We could say, what do people do in a cinema, right? But it sounds strange to say, what do people do in a cinema? So you say, what do you do in a cinema? You watch films and you eat popcorn. This is how we would answer it. Okay? So we have the places, the cinema, the restaurant, the museum, the castle, shopping center, school, hospital, park, gym, hotel, shops. These are all the different places you might find in a city. And then we have the activities. See a doctor, go shopping, play sports, eat dinner, do exercise, stay, watch films, look at paintings, study history, learn things, and have fun. So, what do you do in each of these places? So the example's already given us cinema, that's the first one. What about restaurant? In a restaurant, you eat dinner. Right? You eat dinner in a restaurant. So we're not saying you directed at one particular person, or you're not directing it at me. If you say to me, Carl, you eat this, or you can eat this in the restaurant. Like, okay, that's it's not directed at me. It's just saying, in general, it is possible, or it's what is done. A museum, right? In a museum, maybe study history, look at paintings, look at historical monuments or objects, right? In a castle, similar enough to a museum, maybe you like look at old paintings, or you study history in a castle, perhaps because castles are generally quite old. um, Shopping center, go shopping, quite an easy one. In a school, you learn things, right? So you can start the sentence with the noun, or you can start it with the subject you, right? So you can say you study history in a school, or in a school you study history, or you learn things. So the structure of the sentence can be reversed so long as you keep the phrases together that are supposed to be together. So in school or in a school, you study history, you learn things, right? This is how it's structured. So in a hospital, you see a doctor. In a park, you play sports, you do some exercise. Gym, again, I do exercise. Hotel, you stay in a hotel. So stay is a verb that we use, guys, whenever we talk about where you like rest for a period of time. Um, so that's how we would explain it. Shops then again, right? Go shopping. Um, buy, you say buy items, you buy objects in shops. Right? Depends on the type of shop. Right? Buy food maybe in a grocery shop, in a supermarket, or buy clothes just in a retail store, retail shop. So it depends on which one you're talking about. So what do you do? Okay, now moving on to what is there in your city? Okay, what is there in your city? For example, in my town there is a park. In my city there isn't a cinema. In my city there are lots of shops. In my town there aren't any hotels. Okay, so when we're talking about there is or there are, we need to talk about the things that are present, okay, in your particular place that you're talking about. Okay, so put it simply for any of our Italian viewers that are looking at, say c'è for there is, or ci sono for there are. Okay, I'm not sure for about the Spanish or French for that, but it's describing what is there in a particular place. Okay, what's located. So in my town there is a park. Okay, there isn't a cinema. In my city there are lots of shops. So there are is for the plural, there is for the singular. There aren't any hotels. Very, very important to remember that, guys. So when we say there aren't any. Okay, there aren't any because in the negative we say any. Okay, for the plural. So there aren't any. Okay, so I'm going to describe a couple of different places. I'll describe my hometown in Ireland. I'll also describe Milan. So in Milan, there are a lot of parks. There's one big park, obviously, Parco Sempione, but there are also a lot of smaller parks as well. There are lots of cinemas. There are many, many restaurants. There's lots of museums. Um, what else we'd say? There are lots of schools. Like Milan's a pretty easy one to do because there's pretty much everything you need. There are lots of shopping centers, hotels, of course, for people visiting, gyms, yes. Let me see. Okay, so I'm not going to say there aren't any, but uh, there aren't many Irish pubs in Milan. How about that? There aren't many Irish pubs in Milan. This is a big problem for me, right? Very, very big problem. You need to have more Irish pubs. We can then say, okay, for my town, or my village, I should say. So I live in a small village, or I'm from a small village called Blackrock in County Louth in Ireland. Um, how many people know about it? It's a very small place. But yes, in Blackrock, in my village, there is a pharmacy. There isn't a cinema. You say there. So in the negative, guys, you can say there isn't a cinema, or you can say there aren't any cinemas. Both of these sentences are saying the same thing. Okay, when you want to say zero, right? Nothing. There isn't a, or there aren't any. Both basically saying the same thing. So it's a there are two supermarkets in my village. What else? Oh yeah, there are there are a lot of pubs in my village. Right? It's a very small village, but it's still very, very important to have the pubs there. Very vital. I think you'll find that, I don't know if anybody has visited Ireland, and you'll find that in anywhere that you go, the most important thing, the one constant thing that you have in any town or village in Ireland is a pub. That's always going to be a staple thing in an Irish community. What else? Okay, let me go down through the list here. So there aren't any cinemas, so there isn't a cinema. There are a few restaurants. There isn't a museum. There isn't a castle. There is a church, however, in my village. There are a few shops, not many shops. There are two schools, three schools maybe now, I'm not sure, in my village. Um, they are primary schools, so they're for children. Um, there isn't a hospital in my village, but there is a hospital in the town close by. Um, there is a park. There's a big park in my village. Um, there there aren't any gyms. Um, there isn't a hotel. There isn't a shopping center. So yeah, shopping center, guys, is like the large area, large building with lots of different shops inside. So you have like shops and supermarkets; those are individuals. But when they're all together inside one building, we call this a shopping center. Okay. So let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so like before, as I was describing my own town, you guys can describe your town, what is there and what isn't there. So the example given was what is there in London and what isn't there in London, right? So we can say in London there are museums. What isn't there in London? In London there aren't any mountains. Ah, okay, so there you go, right? So there are museums, there aren't any mountains. So that's what is there, what isn't there. Now, for what can you do there? So, can, guys, can is a modal verb, okay? And can is a modal verb that talks about ability, okay? So when we talk about ability, something that you're able to do, we can use the impersonal you again. So we're gonna use the impersonal you again. to talk about something that you are able to do in a city or in a location, right? So, an important thing to remember is that when we use can, because can is a modal verb, all modal verbs are followed by the infinitive. Okay? Always with the infinitive. Okay? But an important fact to remember, the infinitive without to. Okay? So we say you can go, you can't visit, you can watch, you can't study, right? So each of these is the infinitive without to. Okay? So when we're talking about a location, a place, and we want to describe what people are able to do in that place, we use can. So you say you can go for a walk, you can't visit a castle. So when describing somewhere like London, for example, um, we could say you can go shopping in different shops. You can watch a film in some. You can watch a film in some cinemas. Oh wow, right. So visit a castle. I mean, of course, yes. You can visit one of the most famous castles in the world, as in, well, maybe it's not a castle so much as it's called Buckingham Palace, I guess. So yeah, you can visit a palace. Um, you can you study in London? I mean, yes, of course. If you attend university in London, you can study. But even in some museums or in some other castles, you can study about history, or maybe not study. We'd say learn about. Okay, because study it kind of infers that there's some sort of intensive work being done. Learn is more of like not as intense as study. Okay. Go for a walk, go to a restaurant, all of these different things you can do there, you can't do there. So when we say you can't, obviously the opposite of being able to, you are not able to do something. Why? Because it's impossible to do it in that particular location. So as I said before, you can't you can't go to the cinema in my village because there isn't a cinema in my village. Okay, so you can combine the two of them together. You can't go to the mountains in my village because there aren't any mountains in my village. Okay, so being able to use these together. So guys, unfortunately we've come to the end of our webinar for today. Um, So for any of you guys who are going to be watching this at home afterwards, try to practice describing different places around the world. So just pick a city, right? Pick a city and look at maybe some of the information about it and kind of go through the different things that we've said today, the different things we've covered, and hopefully you'll feel a bit more confident when you're describing a place to someone the next time that it comes up in conversation. But I apologize for some of the tech issues I had, guys. I don't know what happened, but thank you guys for your patience, and I guess I will hopefully talk to you again soon. Have a lovely weekend, guys. Bye bye.